Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining me tonight. Sorry about the delay, but I had some trouble getting on. I just had some little technical difficulties, so I appreciate you joining me tonight, and I appreciate you just hanging out with me tonight as we just discuss a little bit more about Revelation, the novel, and we really dive deeper into the novel and some of the things that go on in this novel. One of the things that we really try to look at in this novel is the impact of trauma, the impact of the broken pieces in our lives. Boy, it gets so very hard. And so the book, we don't even need to go into the book. We don't need to go any further than the prologue. The prologue just deals right away with trauma. I mean, that is exactly how this book opens. It opens with the trauma of Robert Lovelace and how he tries to move from that place. You know, he starts off with finding the death of his mother via suicide. And his mother was never a good influence on him. His mother was never helpful. She was a street worker, a drug addict, and she had lots of problems of her own that prevented her from parenting this young boy. So he started off with a very, very difficult journey from the start. But he was able to move on throughout the novel. But the challenge is, due to his trauma, he parented from a place of that trauma. He parented from a place where he was hurt, broken, anxious, and he just really did not have a place of security. He had a lot of fear. And through his fear, the way he parented was through hypervigilance. And because of that reason, his children also became fearful, anxious, and hypervigilant. So sometimes when we parent from broken places or we move into relationship from broken places, we just go forward. But the shattering of our past can shatter the relationships that we go into. And so the one thing that we want to look at tonight is, you know, we might not have a mother that committed suicide, or we might not have a mother that was abusive or a father that was abusive or not there at all, but we all experience different levels of trauma in our lives. We go through death, we go through divorce, we go through parents, losing our parents. We go through, you know, even walking through the decisions of our children. Sometimes there's abuse in relationship, lots of broken pieces, and they really can impact us. Sometimes not, but sometimes they do. So how do we handle them? And how do we even know if they're impacting us in our daily walk? I mean, many people live with a broken cup. Many people live with a broken cup. You know, it's in the cupboard, it's chipped, but it is not discardable. It still holds the liquid. We still can drink from it. It's not something that we would necessarily discard, but that chip makes it fragile. That chip makes it more vulnerable. And so the next time when we're moving about washing it and moving it from place to place, it can really become even more fragile and more susceptible to further cracking. So many people live with traumas and broken cups, but we just continue to move on and grow and continue to move on and use our lives as we go through life in impacting other people and impacting ourselves. But sometimes trauma is like shattered glass. It's not like a broken piece of a cup at all. It's like a shattered glass, and there are big pieces and there are small pieces. You know, I sat behind these blinds for a reason. These blinds are not perfected. They're bent, they're twisted and tangled, and, you know, they function, but not properly. They can let light in, but not effectively. But more importantly, sometimes when the blinds of life is bent and they're torn and they're impacted, it doesn't keep the darkness fully out. So how do we move forward and keep the darkness out, but pull the light in when we need to pull the light in? You know, that's exactly what trauma is. I mean, these blinds, this is my daughter's room. These blinds have been traumatized. They haven't been divorced. They're not Black. They don't live through PTSD, but they've been used and abused and open and moved about. And so through the course of them being hung, they have gotten some some tears and some bends and some twists. So what is the definition of trauma? Trauma is a deeply disturbing or distressing event, and it's a couple of types of trauma. It could be repeated trauma over and over again, like Robert experienced by living with a drug addicted mother, a mother that wasn't in her healthiest place, or it could be a single event, like a divorce, or a loss of a parent, or an automobile accident, something that really, really affected us deeply. It could go on, or it could just be one thing that hangs us up. So as the book unfolds, we notice that Robert is parenting from that place of fear and anxiety, and it's creating hypervigilance in him and hypervigilance in his kids. But as we move forward in relationship, how do we know if our traumas are impacting us? So let's go deeper. How do we really know the real impact of this stuff? And how do we know if it is impacting us? Well, you know, trauma is like, as I mentioned, shattered glass. Sometimes it's big shards. You can see them. If you ever broke a glass, you can see the big shards, and they're easy to pick up. But it's those little pieces, those little teeny pieces. After you swept everything up, you thought you got everything up and everything nice and clean. Sometimes you got to get down on your hands and knees and look for those really small pieces, because it's the small pieces that get embedded. It's the small pieces that when you're walking with a small piece of glass in your foot, you can feel that thing. You can actually feel it, and it does not feel good. And you can look for it and sometimes can't even find it. So, you know, we need to look at how we get better tomorrow than we are today, how we get those little pieces of glass out of our foot. So, you know, as I've been introducing characters to you along the way, I've been giving you their biblical contemporary. And so how we deal with trauma, I want to come from a biblical perspective. You know, the Bible is important. It is biblical instruction that we use to navigate our lives. And so, you know, I'm just going to pull out a story of trauma. Most people think Job, but I'm not talking about Job today. I'm talking about Naomi. Many people know the story of Ruth and Naomi, but they focus a lot on Ruth and her relationship with Boaz, the kinsman redeemer. But Naomi is the one that experienced a lot of trauma. She was in a land that was once flourishing, but then there was famine in the land. So she was in a land with her husband and her kids, and things were going well, but then there was famine. And she had to move from the place that she's known her whole life. She had to move from her place of security, from the place of Judah, and move right to Moab to find a better place. But they did move. But what ended up happening, I hope you know the story, is that she lost her husband. So not only did she lose her homeland, she lost her husband. And then later on, she lost both of her sons. And she was left with these daughters-in-law. What a traumatic life to leave the place you've already known, the place that's comfortable, the place that you have walked, and the place that you have built a life. And to go to look for something new, something different, something that's going to nourish you. And that place that's nourishing you ends up being a place of pain. Ends up being a place where you lose your husband and you lose your sons and you're left with these daughter-in-law. She was broken. Naomi was broken. But out of her brokenness, she still had mercy. She had mercy for these daughters-in-laws. She told them, hey, you can go on to your home. You don't have to stay with me. because she didn't think she had any more value. She didn't think she had any more value for them. And sometimes that's how trauma is for us. Sometimes we feel like we don't have anything valuable anymore. Just live through a divorce. Just live through losing your children. You don't think there's no more value in you. But thanks be to God, through her trauma, there was someone who stuck by her side. So the first lesson we learn is you got to get to a place where you allow people and things that are nourishing you and helping you. You don't want to push them away. See, Naomi wanted to push them away. She wanted to push Orpah, and she wanted to push Ruth away, because she didn't think she had anything for them, but they had something for her. Ruth had something for her, but she just didn't see it. So the first point of getting over trauma is don't push away the things that you know that are helping. And the second thing, she left Moab because, God had already started to restore the land of her home. So she said, hey, we're going to get back to my home, get back to a place of nourishment. So when you go through trauma, never forget, don't push away the things that are helping you. But, if you don't have anything helping you, try to get to a place of nourishment. Something that's going to nourish your soul, nourish your heart, nourish your mind, and nourish your spirit. So that's the first lesson we can learn from Naomi. The second thing that we learn from Naomi, when she gets back to the land of her home birth, when she gets back to the land of her people, they already know who she is, and they're excited that she's coming. They're excited that she is joining them. And they come to greet her and say, hey, there's Naomi. And the first thing that she says is, don't call me Naomi. My name has been changed. I am bitter. Call me Mara. Call me bitter. That's just from the place that she was coming from in her spirit. She was bitter. She was hurt. She was broken. So even though she got back to the land of nourishment, she carried that pain with her. And that's something that we can learn. That's my second point. Speak the truth. She didn't say that, oh, I'm good. I'm happy. I'm all good. I'm back to my home place. I'm back to the place of nourishment. She spoke what she was feeling. And that's the thing about trauma. You can't ignore it. You can try. You can try to just walk on that shard of glass. But it's more power when you stop and you examine it and you call it what it is. It's a piece of glass in my foot. And I know that this piece of glass in my foot is hurting me. And that's exactly what we learned from Naomi. We learned that she was able to name that pain. It's okay to speak life to situations. We want to speak life over our lives. We want to call into those things that God has spoke about us. We definitely want to do that, but we don't want to neglect our own true experience. We can learn from blind Bartimaeus because, God asked him, what can I do for you? He said that but God knew he was blind, but he said he was blind. He called it as what it was. And that's what I want to encourage everybody to do that is going through trauma. Call it what it is. Because if you speak life over your situation, I'm happy, I'm full of peace, I'm full of joy, but in your heart, you are bleeding in pain, it's incongruent. God wants to also hear about our pain. We make confession to him. We want to confess our truth to him because he can handle it. We might not can handle it, but he can handle it. So by saying she's bitter, God already knows that she's bitter. But by speaking her truth, God heard her, that she was coming from her place of pain. So sometimes it's important to speak truth to the situation, although we are speaking life. So that's the second part that we can learn from Naomi's experience. The third thing that we can learn from Naomi's experience with her trauma. Now we're talking about getting over trauma and traumatizing events. The third thing that we can learn in regards to managing trauma in our lives, we can learn right from Naomi. Look for the hope in your future. See, when Ruth came to Naomi and told her about the kinsman redeemer and all that he was doing for her, and all the meal that he gave her and that she shared with her. Naomi didn't say, no, 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 don't go back there. Naomi didn't say, she wasn't cynical about it. Oh, just go there and go someplace, other place tomorrow. She recognized the hope by trying to help somebody else. She ended up helping herself. So recognize the hope in your future. Sometimes, even though you're in a place of pain, you can help somebody else and their hope becomes your hope. So the thing that we can learn from Ruth is to look for the hope in the future. The other kind of traumatic event, the story of Ruth and Naomi has a lot of life lessons about the kinsman redeemer and about the plan of God, and how the plan of God, even though she started off bitter, she was given another son. Because at the end of the chapter, it talks about her holding her son, even though it was Ruth's son. So, we learned about the hope and how God can redeem that pain. But there's another trauma that I want to talk about tonight. And it is not Job. I'm talking about the trauma of Tamar. Tamar was a young lady that was raped by her own brother. And someone she went to help. She went to help him. And he ended up raping her. And even in her exchange with him, she told him, she said, hey, don't do this. Don't do this. She pled her case, but he still ended up raping her and despising her. So what happened to Tamar? How did she handle that trauma? So she left her brother's place and went and told her other brother. She left the half brother and went and told her full brother what had happened. And he said, hey, come and live with me. I'm going to take care of you. Because in that culture, anyone who had lost their virginity, they were no longer redeemable. So he said, hey, come live with me. I'm going to take care of you. So she did just that. She went to live with him. But that's all we know. Because under his roof, she became a desolate woman. What does it mean to be a desolate woman? To be in a place of pain, hide out with someone you think is going to take care of you, but that was tending more to their needs than your needs. She became a desolate woman. That means there was no hope for her. There was no redemption for her on this side of heaven, right? We don't know on the other side, but on this side of heaven, she was desolate, she was down, she was depressed, and that was the end of her story. So what we learn from that is staying put can lead to desolation. Staying put and not moving from that place of pain, not touching it, not examining it, not dealing with it can lead to desolation. But another important piece we can learn from Tamar is that not only that not moving and not dealing with that place of pain can lead to desolation, but leaving your healing in someone else's hands can also lead to a place of desolation. She trusted her brother to take care of her and to handle it. But she was a desolate woman. He didn't handle it. She didn't get hope. She didn't get restoration. She didn't get what she needed. So never trust your place of pain to somebody else, right? Somebody on this side of heaven. Because there's always things working together for our good. So if you are a part of this Facebook group, please don't hesitate to pick up the notes, because there's some scriptures that encourage you along your way of how to deal with trauma. It tells the story of Naomi. It points you there. It points the story of Tamar, but it also points you to the hope, which brings me back to the book Revelation. Right here in the book of Revelation that I wrote, I hope you have the book. There's some hidden gems. And one of the hidden gems talks about these better blankets that Big Mama gives Robert, that Big Mama gives these members of her family. They're a symbolic representation of hope, that things can get better. There's the covering of people who love the Lord. There's a better blanket that needs to be put on you, that has been put on you, that you have access to, that can cover you in your place of pain. So it just depends. Do we cover ourselves with hope? Do we cover ourselves with that better blanket when things get tough? Or do we leave our place of pain to somebody else? Do we go to a place of desolation and don't move forward, don't help anybody, get shut up in the house in a place of darkness? But as you move through trauma and as you think about your life, because this book and this talk is all about going deeper. And as you go deeper into yourself and start to examine your own truth, part of that is realizing who and what you put your hope in. What and who you put your hope in. It's all up to you. You make the decision. But you can be healed. You can be restored and you can be redeemed. Keep reading the book and see how exactly these characters get redeemed. These characters and relationships get restored. What is their path? What is their journey that led to hope for the future? I thank you for joining me tonight. It's been a dynamic discussion. I've had fun. I thank the Lord for this word. I thank him what he's doing. I am excited about this book. I'm excited about the talks that we will have about this book. So next time, don't hesitate to join me. If you join me, but you know somebody who could benefit from joining me or benefit from this book or benefit from this discussion, don't hesitate to just gift them a copy. Christmas is coming. Don't hesitate to just point them to my website or get them in contact with me. I would love to continue this discussion of hope, healing, and how we can be better tomorrow than we are today. God bless you and thank you. Have a great evening. I appreciate you. Bye-bye.